Do you know what time it is, Method Mikey? But of course, it is midnight, the witching hour, and it is time for some satanic royalty.
Yep, it's going to be that kind of show, all right. Good, clean, wholesome family fun. And I, for one, just can't wait. Oh, yeah. Cookies?
If you had told 10 years of Catholic grammar school Tim that he would be doing a review of an album called Satanic Royalty, he would have certainly thought, I hate wearing dress shoes while playing basketball at recess. So that's what it leads to, doing reviews of albums called Satanic Royalty.
I've come a long way myself since the days of private yeshiva school. And how did I get here? Well, I'll let the professionals deal with that. We're here to entertain, as Freddie Mercury would say.
Let's talk about how we first learned about the band. I started seeing photos of them, and you will notice that they have an executioner look to them. And so it really stands out. Just decided, okay, let me look them up on YouTube. And the first thing I saw was them. It must have been at some metal festival. And you know it's a metal festival. It's a very specific type of crowd, very specific type of look, type of feel. And they played this song, Satanic Royalty, which is the first track on the album. It's actually really kind of catchy. It's quite blasphemous, but it's kind of what metal's supposed to be. A cool thing about this band is that they're run by Athanar, and he plays all the instruments on the album. This guy does all the recording by himself, so it's kind of a one-man band. However, he plays with different players when he goes live, and he's even stated in interviews, he believes the players have to actually dumb themselves down to play the parts that he created on the album. But I think he downplays himself a bit. For one guy playing all the instruments, this is definitely one of the better ones I've heard. Just one dude going all out. And he's from Cleveland. And I kind of think that fits into this band in a lot of ways. Not giving a fuck. Just always being called the mistake by the lake. And I think some of that played into how the band took on their persona. I love their midnight font. It is what Athanar called his sociopath scribble, but it really stands out. When I first saw them, I just immediately thought they were very marketable. Just the fact that they're wearing those hoods, just this sociopathic scribble, but it's a very recognizable font. It's the type of font you would see if you were going to a concert or a trade show and someone had a whole bunch of pins to sell. If there was a midnight pin, it would fit right in with like a Tool or any of these big bands that have that very specific logo that's recognizable.
So it's funny you mentioned, I got into this band the old school, the organic way. You got me into them. You told me about them. It's kind of a throwback to when we were younger, to the days before Spotify and YouTube and algorithms, how you'd hear about bands by word of mouth. So it was old school. I knew nothing about these guys at all. In middle school and high school, a lot of the music I listened to was like Headbangers Ball and the family tree of that. So it was cool to get into a band that sounds like they would have been in that vein. The visual, so you'll laugh, as we've talked about, I'm a huge wrestling fan. For anybody who wants reference, Billy Jack Haynes was a WWF wrestler from Portland. He was a territory guy, but he was also in WCW in the early 90s as Black Blood. And if you Google Black Blood could have been cousins with this dude from Midnight. Looks exactly like him. It's kind of a throwback to the days before the internet where you knew what everybody's diet is, where you could go on Instagram and see a guy making like kale, quinoa, tuna salad for himself and then being in a death metal band. There's a mystique to it, which is kind of cool. Cleveland's a nice place. I mean, I know they kind of get shit up, but they have a deep musical history, which goes way back. Trent Reznor's from there, or Richard Patrick from Filter, Bobby Womack. Devo's from like the suburbs of Cleveland or Akron, really. But so there's a lot of musical history in Cleveland. And there's a reason the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is there.
So let's get into the album a bit. The first track, it's called Satanic Royalty, and it starts out kind of some backwards lyrics. There's always another element in metal. Back in the day, people thought that was satanic. If you listen to it, the right way, then you would hear some kind of mythical evil. So another, trope, if you will, of metal, but played to in a fun way. I mean, you can tell throughout this album, there's just some good old fun metal riffs, and the lyrics are ridiculous metal lyrics,
Yeah, good, very good opening track. Venom, obvious influence first. Okay, they're going for the Venom sound. Then they have a little bit of elements of Motorhead and Priest in it as well. So when I first heard this album, my initial thought is, are these guys going to be like full black metal? I can't understand what they're saying. Satan, like growling, Cookie Monster, double bass drum blast beats. But then I hear this, I'm like, okay, so they're going for a little bit of Venom, but also the NWOBHM. And for those who are not familiar, that's the new wave of British heavy metal. So around the late 70s, England was having a tough time economically, and a lot of people were in factories, and hard rock started changing into heavy metal. And they were writing these riffs, these like chugga 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 riffs that kind of sounded a lot like machinery, factory machinery. And all these bands came out like Diamond Head and Saxon, and then darker bands like Venom and also Raven as well. And that really influenced Metallica and Megadeth and all the thrash bands that would eventually get very popular in America by the mid 80s. So a lot of NWOBH, like that speed in here as well. Speed and a lot of guitar harmonies, usually like dual guitar playing, that was in the NWOBHM.
Yeah, and one thing, like you were mentioning about the Cookie Monster growls of some like metal bands, I personally can't get down with that. That's akin to like auto-tune and rap for me. The vocalist determines a lot of if I can really like a band or not. And a good example of that is Rush. I respect the hell out of the musicianship. I just can't stand the sound of the singer's voice. I mean, prove me wrong. I'm sure there may be a couple of songs I would like, but the ones I've heard, I just... Tom Sawyer. I just can't. I know you're a big Rush guy, but amazing musicianship in that band. But that for example. So this band, another thing that plays into with like, to me, the humor of it all, the kind of growl that Athanar has. If you go ahead and we'll leave a link to like an interview with him. He sounds like the most pleasant dude in the world.
This is a common thing, as people who know me will tell you. Sitting this style in the middle of a room is very comfortable. Sometimes really what you need, just a single line, and then if you're lucky, it just kind of flows from there.
Rotten and rude, swallow at will. You take the knife, go chop, bloodbath, food turned into feed. Doomed for life. Okay, there it was. 2 hours of hard work.
He sounds like just a really chill dude. And then you get him on stage and get him on the record, and he's got this crazy metal growl. But it's not a Cookie Monster type of angle. It's more of like, you can understand what he's growling about. It fits in perfect with those metal riffs.
There are some growlers in metal who I think are great, and like they're not purely like guys like Burton from Fear Factory and Phil from Pantera, he's had his issues. I'll leave it at that. Like that kind of growling and that kind of like screaming, that works. This guy does it in a way, Athanar, that is not pure like just Cookie Monster, like, Like he actually had there was a lot of substance to what he's doing.
The first 3 tracks for me are really tight, but like this second track is the best song on the album. When Your Soul's in the Red and There's No Turning Back. It is total Motorhead style. Obviously borrows some influences, but it stands out on its own. I think it's right up there with some of the best speed metal I've ever heard. Definitely belongs in the pantheon of some of the great ones out there.
The song gave me a nice belly laugh because You Can't Stop Steel. Right? I'm like, Judas Priest. Okay, cool. Their commercial breakthrough in the United States, British Steel. Breaking the law, breaking the law. Anytime I hear the word steel and metal, it's like, okay, it's like word association or SATs. It's like, okay, Judas Priest time. Cool. And they did a nice Priest impersonation on here. Good workout music.
It is. It actually is. When this one comes on in my headphones at the gym, I get into it, man. But he's a stated fan of Priest, so that's not too far of a stretch at all.
Third track, Rip This Hell. The third track to me is really interesting because here's a band I'm going to throw out for a comparison, and you're probably going to be like, say what? Def Leppard. Now, everyone knows Def Leppard, at least commercially in the United States. When you think of Def Leppard, what's the first track that you think of?
Montag lieben Glauten Globen.
Say what?
Rock of Ages. The start of it is some gibberish. Montag lieben Glauten Globen. I'm probably a bad person to ask because I think the answer you are looking for is Pour Some Sugar on Me. You know, that song's whatever. It's like 80s hair metal. But I like the earlier stuff, like Photograph.
Yeah, they were part of the new wave of British heavy metal. They came out in the late 70s, and
yeah, they get lumped in with the hair metal stuff. They kind of branched over both eras.
Hysteria made them superstars in the United States commercially and was more pop. But if you listen to their first couple of albums, it's all NWO BHM. And this track, if you put this track and Wasted, which is from their 1981 album. And so it's kind of like a cool, whether it's intentional or not, it was a cool like tribute to Def Leppard.
I was reading one article where the author just goes, what the hell does that even mean? Rip this hell. Like it doesn't even mean anything, but it's just perfect. Like, again, plays into the kind of humor of it all. And this Athanar, man, he definitely gets it. It's fun. It's ridiculous. You know, he's just going full on, like doesn't give a fuck, which is actually one of the songs. I think I forget which album it's off of, but it's called "Who Gives a Fuck." It's a midnight track called "Who Gives a Fuck." It's just pretty spot on with everything about it. Yeah. I don't think he has like a true, real stance on politics or this kind of I think he's just all about metal, and Rip This Hell is very fitting for that. Another solid track. Those first 3 tracks, fantastic speed metal, thrash metal. What do you call it? Speed or thrash metal?
Yeah,
I guess
we're going to get into arguments, people, and they're going to keep people in line. Well, technically but we're not going to go there.
Yeah, there's so many different little
subgenres. Yeah, but so like Necromania, I think is pure ham.
Let me ask because you're big on the musicianship here. Is there a different timing in this song?
I didn't notice it
because I wanted to know if we had another waltz on our hands. I don't think so, but there's
onto the 5th track. If I could move along, Black Dam. So this is interesting because even though this is like speed thrash metal, to me there's a lot of Rocky Erickson in his track of like the softer, non-distorted parts, and then there's also a little like 90s commercial Megadeth, and the solo is total. It's like pure Kirk Hammett, where it's very melodic, and that was cool. It's Kirk Hammett minus the wah-wah, which is Kirk has used in many of his solos over the years with Metallica and even Exodus beforehand. So it was cool to put like as a change up, because if you do 10 tracks just punch you in the face all speed, that's cool, but you always want a little diversity in albums and different kind of time signatures and dynamics.
Yeah, 100%. It was a good change up to throw into the album. Here, like you said, Rocky Erickson, slow it down a little bit more sludgy and mix it up for the album's sake. We're going to go right back into the thrash metal here with a song Al Bundy would certainly approve of, called Lust, Filth, and Sleaze. Dirty-ass men with dirty-ass minds. Hi, my name is Mummies on Main Street, and I'm a dirty-ass man.
My name is Method Mike A, and you better believe it, I'm a dirty-ass motherfucker. Yeah, this was a song that, somewhere under, Lemmy from Motorhead is having a shot of whiskey to this track and being like, right on, boys. Right on.
I wrote the same thing in my notes. Lemmy would have loved this band.
Yeah, he'd just be saluting them and like, oh, they're shot, boys, or I can't do the Lemmy voice, but yeah, he would have totally looked. This literally is like right up there, even like the content mode, very influenced by Motorhead. From a musician's point of view, like lyrically, there's not much to analyze. It's just like, okay,
there's nothing to analyze here.
Yeah, I'm just like, before I get into one minor thing from the musician's point of view, imagine like we talk about social niceties and trying to be polite and all that chivalrous bullshit. If you were to imagine this is like a party track. You have a party and you have the Spotify mix going on. You got all your standard shit that's popular nowadays. Travis Scott, Megan Thee Stallion. So, so you're playing stuff like that. And this track comes on and just like watch the mood in the room go from like to be like wah, 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 wah. And all of us dirty ass mofos in the background are sitting there laughing, kind of like we were at the beginning of this with
But then it's like, yo, you like the song WAP, so how's this that much different? This is damn near the same thing.
You know what WAP that track WAP reminds me of? And we'll go back to the Miss Fats episode for a second, because I'm going to get fat. Anytime I hear the track WAP, I want a Whopper. I want to eat. I want to treat. In any event. So there was one part musically, which I felt like during a guitar solo, like the chords just got silly here. I didn't love it. That's one, like, if I was that asshole producer in the studio, imagine like Bob Rock meets John Waters, like going like, no, we're doing a taking, no, Athanar, how can you be doing this chord progression is ridiculous, this is comical, you're taking that out, this is not ascending, this is not the Broadway, this is not the ballet, take this out and make it heavier and nastier. I want dirt, I want grittiness, I want filth, I want lust, sleaze, filth, grab a girl's ass, make her slap you. None of this ballet.
It goes in, though, too, just talking about the lust, filth, and sleaze with kind of cool apparel line they have. There's some cool midnight yoga pants out there that the ladies are loving. And it's funny because Midnight actually has a lot of female fans. I think there's an appreciation from females that just kind of like are just like, yeah, that's kind of what I like too.
Yeah, man, chick sig metal.
And I dig metal chicks.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Dig metal, yeah. Chick sig metal too. It's not only exclusive. It's not only a boys club, and it should never be that way. It's for everybody. It's everybody.
Lust, filth, and sleaze for all.
So yes. The next two tracks I kind of grouped together: Violence on Violence and Savage Dominance. So there's clearly something going on here, a lot of sadomasochism. Both tracks, 7 to me was like whatever, it was fine. It was too similar to tracks 3 and 6. 3 being, of course, Ripped as Hell, and 6 being Lust, Filth, and Sleaze. Savage Dominance, I didn't really find, it was cool, but it was like yield reliable. I think to me what stood out the most was that guitar solo, or like the fuzz it had on it. Now that shit reminded me of old school Detroit, MC5, Stooges. Goes back to the whole Henry Rollins thing of what were they drinking in the water in Michigan to get that guitar tone. This has that fuzz, that like old school, pure rock and roll, aggressive fuzz. And I don't know if this dude, Athanar, is a fan of that. The Stooges and those proto-punk groups, even Pere Ubu, who's a little bit later, don't really show up in his music. But it'd be something fun to ask him, and it's definitely an influence, consciously or subconsciously.
I quite liked the Violence on Violence track. I love the little guitar harmonic that goes into that chorus. Violence on Violence. It's just like a quick one.
Oh, no, yeah. So
it's so ridiculous. It's just a funny little...
Yeah.
But it's funny. It cracks me up. Like,
Yeah, he's sliding. He's hitting that note like like a little like a little accent or like an emphasis, and that was cool. That was cool. That was cool. Fast Eddie Clark of Motorhead would have really appreciated that.
but it works. It just works for this album. It works for this band. And then the Savage Dominance, like you said, like the whole S&M angle, another kind of metal trope in there. But
It's funny there's so much like S&M dominance in metal. Like we should get together with some of our friends from Jersey and just we should come up with like a black metal track and just have it about like safe sex or about like we don't do anal or something like that. I think it would be hilarious. Like we will penetrate the behind. Like I love shit like that when more satirical. Rob Crow who plays in the band Pinback. He's done a lot of that in his day, like death metal influences. I mean, he has one of his side bands called Goblin Cock, and they play like that kind of like, death metal, but it's like satirical death metal music. Closing it out, so we have 2 more to go. And this track, from a musical point of view, I like how the bass showed a bass player some love. The bass finally got to do a lot more, and this kind of be the standout instrument here. It starts out with bass.
Just to jump in real quick, the instrument that Athanar plays live is actually the bass.
Makes sense. I can see that. A lot of multi-instrumentalists play bass live, and that's, that could be Simon Green from Bonobo, or Adeline, who my buddy online, who I always have to give shit to her when she doesn't put her new release on Bandcamp right away. But moving right along, yeah, it was a quick one, very Motorhead influence, and the bass kind of got to lead, so I was cool with that. Nice fuzz on the bass, just the right amount of fuzz. Getting fuzz on bass is very tricky, and he did, whether it's through studio or through kicking a bunch of old tube amps together, he did a good job.
Yeah, there was a bit of slowing down and then speeding up the tempo, so I thought that was pretty interesting. It wasn't just straight ahead thrash metal. And their final song is Shock Till Blood, and has a little bit of that tinge of kind of the mathy metal, if I like to call it that.
My favorite part about this track was actually something more hard rock and classic rock. It's about, I think, 1:50 into it. It's like a half-hearted bridge where everything goes out except the drums, just kind of doing that drum beat. And then the guitars, it's like the left speaker, the dueling guitars, left speaker versus right speaker. That to me was very much something that Queen, like Brian May, would do, or even like Led Zeppelin, or from like the classic rock. That was cool, and that was like a nice dynamic. Metallica did stuff like that in their Diamond Head covers on Garage Inc. and Garage Inc. Revisited. And it's kind of an older musical trick that is more prevalent in classic rock and 80s and not used too much. It's kind of a little corny now. I think the best example modernly was Stone Temple Pilots did it on MC5 on their number 4 album, and it worked there because the track's called MC5. But it was cool. It was just such a change up, and like kind of like a splash of cold water on your face. Oh wow. That's really subtle, and they pulled that out of their ass. Athanar pulled that out of his ass. Well done.
Yeah, so just our final scores for the album. I'm going to give it a solid 4 out of 5 cannonballs, personally. At times comical. It's a stretch to say demonic. It's more comonic, maybe is the right word. And despite a lot of it being a similar tinge of thrash metal, I think he still managed to make every track pretty unique. And again, the fact that this is just one dude doing all of this is super impressive. I always think it's an important thing when a band gets it, and he totally does. He totally gets it. The way I liken listening to this Midnight album is like a fun trip to the strip club. Lust, Filth, and Sleaze. From the cartoonish growling to the ridiculousness of a Lust, Filth, and Sleaze, or violence on violence, rip this hell, just the ridiculous names alone. It's reveling in the darker side of things. It reminds me of kind of like just the spirit of the Vandals and Now We Dance. I just appreciate when a band wholeheartedly picks a concept and sticks to it. And this band has done that, and I think it's something that the fans really appreciate.
I'm going to give this album a 3.5 out of 5 cannonballs. I love the energy. I think it's a very good debut LP or full length. I think it's a little bit raw in that he wears influences on his sleeves, which is cool. and I like what they're doing. And I think, and they've been around. This album came out in 2011, so I want to see like that progression. I want to see him go up and start doing more of those little subtleties, like he did on the last track, throwing at dueling guitar, grow as a songwriter. I think this band has a lot of potential. Or it's this guy and whatever artist he chooses to book in the studio or play live, or if he wants to continue as a solo, just recording everything. There's a lot of potential, and I'm curious where he's gone since then and how his songwriting, if it's improved or if it's kind of stayed the same.
Well, there's many albums they've come out with, so there's plenty to check out, and I recommend everybody do that.
They're actually on Metal Blade Records, so this guy has Athenar and his contingent have progressed. That's a pretty big deal getting on Metal Blade Records. It's one of the big independent metal records in the United States right now. I have listened to a little bit, and it does seem the songwriting has improved and they're taking a step forward. Look, like every band, like take Metallica as an example, listen to Kill 'Em All, which came out in 1983, and then listen to Master of Puppets in 86 and Injustice for All in 88. And you could see the progression as songwriters. The tracks were longer, the arrangements, it was almost like symphonies or pieces in each track. And I'm curious now that this dude is doing full lengths, if with Rebirth of Blasphemy and also going forward, and when they're able to tour again when the world opens up for concerts, what is going to happen in the continued evolution and progression of Midnight.
Guess what time it is, Method Mike A?
I don't know. What time could it be?
Do you like donuts?
I love donuts. I'm actually really hungry right now, and I could definitely go for a couple of donuts.
You're in luck, because we've renamed our segment Donut Time.
Donut Time.
This is kind of when we bring up a side topic to discuss to close out. One I wanted to ask you about was a little saying that you have when somebody shows up with a fancy new hairdo or look. It is season 3 hair. So please do explain.
Yeah, and I think this is a lot more common now. People should be able to pick this up.
Would this be season 3 hair?
I've known you so long. This is like season 17 hair. This is like that British show Red Dwarf, where they've had so many different serials or so many different seasons at this point. So, you know, it's beyond that with us. Somebody I've only known 2 years, if they were to come back and go from a brunette to blonde, or go from long to short, or get a faux hawk or a mohawk or a mullet, or if a girl were to have really long hair and go Fifth Avenue, which is up to here. Yeah, so it's a pretty common thing nowadays. It kind of started with a friend of mine when we noticed people would come back on like TV shows or in sports or even in school, that anticipation when you'd come back to school and your friends would have different haircuts or a new look. And it kind of comes that way because the Mighty Ducks, the third one, I think the main character, Charlie Conway, had really long hair. And then if you look at TV shows throughout the last 25, 30 years, characters often have different haircuts every single season. I mean, we saw in like Breaking Bad, even with, you know, Walter White, he starts off with like regular hair and glasses, and he goes bald because of his treatments and gets a goatee. Or, you know, Friends or whatever, when Jennifer Aniston and Lisa Kudrow, when they would cut their hair and it would be long or short. It's a pretty common thing, and especially with how popular shows are now, and especially that we're all doing Netflix and Peacock and all these streaming services. We've all gone through like season 2, season 3. I mean, look, there's your average Tom, Dick, and Harry stiffs who come with the same haircut and same look. We've all had different looks, and throughout the years, I've had long hair, short hair, mohawks, mullets, completely bald, and with hair.
It's cool. I remember hearing Henry Rollins in an interview talk about how he could figure out what year it was from looking at a picture just based on like the tattoos he had or his length of his hair at that time. For me, you know, with sometimes a spotty memory, like, wait a minute, I can't remember people's names very well, but like if I see a picture and I'm like, okay, I could kind of figure that out based on, you know, what was I wearing, what kind of hair did I have going on, you know, what weight was I at, because that's changed too quite a bit. Yeah, it's a cool thing to do, to change things up, and it's fun, man. We could all have the same look all the time, and I guess if it works for some people, fine, but I love characters and I love mixing it up.
COVID has been a time of self-discovery and personal journey for me, and that goes with this as well. And when it's over, or when we go back to the real world, I don't plan on shaving this off. I will make it look a little bit neater, probably like my boy Jonathan Frakes, who you may be familiar with as Commander William T. Riker from Star Trek The Next Generation. I had to get it in there. I'll remember this time period of my life based on this beard and this hat too, and getting into midnight.
Speaking of time and midnight, it's about time for us to skedaddle for this episode.
Yeah, man, I'm gonna turn into a fucking pumpkin if we keep going any longer.
Well, at midnight, we all turn into pumpkins. Midnight, the witching hour.
Everybody in the pool.
Everybody in the pool. Everybody in the pool.